This is screencast number 2 on William Wordsworth for EH204 Introduction to British Lit. I'm going to continue on with the two last poems in our agenda for this week. The world is too much with us, and then lines composed upon Westminster Bridge are the last two in our agenda for this week. The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending we lay waste our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. For this, for everything, we are out of tune. It moves us not. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. So might I, standing on this pleasant lay, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So the speaker is describing humankind's relationship with the natural world in terms of loss. um, it's very clear that, Wordsworth was all about nature and really how mankind had been moving kind of away from nature, moving away from uh, the the power and the beauty of nature here. And so once upon a time that relationship did flourish, but now due to everything that was happening in everyday life, we have industrialization. Wordsworth is seeming to suggest that humankind has lost the ability to kind of appreciate and celebrate and be soothed by nature. So he begins with the world is too much with us, and he's talking not about the world, like the whole planet kind of thing, but more like the worldly cares and concerns that we have. The world, it's too much. It's too much with us that we care far too much about worldly things. The world is too much with us, late and soon. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers. He's suggesting that by using our time, our minds, and our energy and getting and spending, that we're wasting our lives, we're laying waste to our powers, because that's what we are focusing our attention on. So we're so tied up in our greed and our money and our time, that we've made those a priority when they shouldn't be, and they shouldn't be a priority. He says, little we see in nature that is ours. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. So he says that while we've spent our time acquiring kind of worldly pleasures, the true beauty of the earth is something that cannot be owned. And he reveals that the very few things that we do see in nature, that they don't belong to us. Um, there's very few things that are there that actually belong to us. It belongs to the world and in the greater sense. And so he says we've given our hearts away, where we should be enjoying nature, though it's not ours to own. Instead, we're getting and spending and acquiring wealth and worldly possessions. And we're really missing out on something by being so caught up in our possessions. He says, "This sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours, and are up gathered now like sleeping flowers." So he's describing the beauties of nature that most people are missing out on: the sea, the wind, the flowers, and each one we see that he gives those. He gives us human characteristics to those personas in nature, gives us personification to help the reader connect a little deeper with them. So the sea bears her bosom to the moon, which suggests there's intimacy between the moon and the sea, which, that's the whole idea of the moon creating the waves and the tide and that kind of thing. The winds howl, the flowers sleep. So, giving those human attributes helps the reader to feel more connected with nature. if if we were to allow ourselves to get back in tune, with what is happening around us, we were really missing out by being caught up in our pursuit of possessions. In lines 8 through 10, he says, "For this, for everything, we are out of tune, it moves us not. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn." Um, because we are so caught up, we're out of tune with what's happening in the world around us, with what's really happening in the natural world around us. So he swears that he would rather be a pagan, which is someone who does not believe like necessarily in a higher deity that is a human. I guess maybe that's probably the wrong way to say it. But a pagan would be somebody that would have multiple gods and usually would worship nature or the spirits of nature. And he says he would rather be a pagan than to be so distracted. Uh, to be able to, that he's unable to enjoy the true beauties of life. And so he appeals to God, great God there. But he said that he would rather be a pagan than to be out of touch with nature. He says, "So might I, standing on this pleasant lay, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn, have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn." So he says if he were a pagan, he would have glimpses of nature that would give him, joy and hope and make him feel less forlorn or less melancholy or sad. And so said he would rather be poor and helpless, essentially, than be and connected with nature than rich and powerful and alienated from it. In the final two lines, he refers to two pagan gods. So we have Proteus, who was thought to be able to tell the future, and he says he could imagine being in touch with Proteus, or at least catching a glimpse of him as he stares out across the sea. And Triton obviously was a pagan god that was said to be able to calm the waves of the sea. And he had the Triton, the three-pronged kind of, if you think of Aquaman, I guess maybe, the three-pronged Triton. That he carried. He said, like he could have glimpses of these pagan gods, um, and he would he would he wants to be back in touch, maybe, or maybe in my opinion he feels maybe more in touch with nature than everybody else around him. But he longs for, he's forlorn or sad or depressed because he longs for that reconnection with the earth and away from more worldly things. Okay, the last one is Westminster Bridge. Lines composed upon Westminster Bridge, September 3rd, 1802. So I'll read it really quick and then we'll discuss it. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Dull would he be of soul who could pass by a sight so touching in its majesty. The city now doth like a garment wear the beauty of the morning, silent, bare. Ships, towers, domes, theaters, and temples lie open and the fields, and to the sky, all bright and glittering in the smokeless air. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. Ne'er saw I, never felt a calm so deep. The river glideth at his own sweet will. Dear God, the very houses seem asleep, and all that mighty heart is lying still. So Westminster Bridge is a road and foot traffic bridge that stretches over the River Thames, and it links Westminster and Lambeth. It's a grade two structure, meaning that it has historical and cultural significance, designed and built between 1739 and 1750 by the architect Charles Labelite. Um, it proved essential in ferrying traffic to the developing South London and South coastal ports, and it kind of helped people avoid the congested London road traffic. But it also is known for its as the connector between the rich and the poor areas of London. So it's odd. This poem is different because usually they're a celebration of natural beauty that's provided by the earth, and it's really unusual to come across a poem of his that is celebrating the beauty of a man-made structure like this one. So it takes the form of a Petrarchian sonnet, which means it's an Italian sonnet form, 14 lines, an 8-line octave, followed by a 6-line sestet. And then lines here is going to provide us, the reader, with a very vivid picture of a London morning, the city, while it's kind of sleeping, as seen from Westminster Bridge in the early morning. And so all these buildings, and ships and towers and theaters and temples are all sleeping. They're lying silent, but glittering in the smokeless morning air, and that's capturing a moment before the city is busy and bustling and traffic and noise and smoke and fog and all of that. So in lines 1 through 8 in the octave, where it starts. He's standing on the bridge, and he's reminiscing about this beauty of London in the early morning. And so he says that this scene is so beautiful that there cannot be anything more beautiful on earth. Earth has not anything to show more fair. Um, he said, "A man who can pass by this scene without being affected by it would be very dull indeed." So it's full of grandeur. It speaks greatly to the heart, appeals to the heart. And he says it's almost like London is wearing a white dress of light in the early morning. There's no noise. It's silent. It's peaceful. It's calm. It's open up to the sky. Yeah, there are ships, there are towers, theaters, and temples, but everything is lying silent in the smokeless air. Okay. The last 6 lines, that sestet at the end, he's talking about the beauty of the sunshine in the morning, where never did the sun more beautifully steep there. Never did sun more beautifully steep in his first splendor, valley, rock, or hill. So he's talking about it's this view. It's never been seen before, the beauty of the sunshine in any valley, on any rock or hill, as it is shining on this morning. And he says that he's never saw or felt such a deep calm before. The Thames is flowing by in its own course. It's just big river, majestic river. It's following its own path, its own chosen path, and he's grateful to God for this moment in time, for this quiet scene in which even the houses are so still that they seem to be sleeping. It's kind of interesting. I think it's like this the heart of the city has stopped beating, um, and to be able to see this calm and quiet, and this beauty of those natural objects. And that's such a contrast to when the city wakes up. It's very commercial, even then, and now, like it's a very bustling city. There are only certain times of day, and an early morning is one of them, where the city is still and it sleeps. And during the day, there's so much noise and bustle. And so that calm is kind of um what he's drawn to about this scene. Like he's never felt something so peaceful and so beautiful before as it is, as he feels at this moment, and in this place. And so in a little while, it's going to wake up, it's going to start throbbing with activity, but at the moment, this mighty heart of England is still and calm.